Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. First, let me apologize for the delay. I've been having technical difficulties and so I had to pause all my recordings. But thank you so much for checking in. I've had people asking, when are you uploading the next video? I can't wait. I truly appreciate that because it gave me the motivation to keep getting things done and fixing the issue. So thank you so much for being loyal and for staying as subscribers. So we're going to jump right into our next discussion, which will be on preparing your online classrooms. This is not about the activities or the lessons yet, but this will be about the strategies and the techniques that you can use to prepare yourself for the online classrooms. So if you know teachers who have been having challenges, lead them to this particular video. And guess what? I will not be going into a lecture mode. We're going to have fun, and I expect you to engage with me because this is how it's going to be done when it comes to online classrooms. So let's get started. We know that there's a pandemic, and before I even go into any of the strategies and the tips, please be safe. Follow all the protocols to make sure that you stay safe, your family stays safe, and of course your students. Okay, I know it can be daunting and overwhelming and stressful trying to remember all the tips, all the measures, but we have to play our part. This is the human race versus a virus. It's not just about one pocket of people, it's everyone in this together. So please follow all the safety measures so that we can get through this. So let's stay safe. All right. So we know that with regards to the pandemic, changes have been made in workplaces and of course in the classrooms, and this is where we've been having a lot of challenges on how to make sure that quality teaching is taking place and to make sure that our students are learning, because that's the key. You want to make sure that your students are getting the best from you and also that they are enjoying their school life. But however, this will be taking place mainly online. And yes, we have what we call the blended, and in fact I've been getting news that teachers have been having problems how to have on-site and online classes at the same time. And I have another video that will be coming up on how to do that, because you don't want to be burning from both ends. So before I jump into that, let's look at some tips on how we can prepare our online classrooms. So let's go. Tip 1, plan and prepare. We know the famous saying, proper preparation prevents poor performance, right? But I would love to switch that up and say proper preparation produces proficient performance. At the end of the day, when we plan and prepare, it eases the stress. Not that we won't have any, but it eases it. It makes it a little easier to get through the different challenges that we are facing right now. In your planning and preparation, I would consider that as your umbrella for everything else, because without planning and preparation, everything else will not be what we call like fixed into that puzzle. So that's your umbrella, planning and preparation. And you have to take into consideration how you're going to conduct your classes, what materials you will need to make sure that your online lessons are going effectively, what materials you will need to make sure that your recorded lessons are going effectively. You have to think about setting aside time for your admin duties, set aside time for feedback, of course communicating with your parents, making sure that your computers, browsers are up and going, all the devices that you need to make sure that your online sessions are going well. So those things you'll have to take into consideration, and not to mention your lesson, your content. You want to make sure that you've selected the essential parts of your content that will go live, and deciding what content can be recorded or self-paced for your students. So in your planning and preparation, remember, keep it simple. I know it sounds, the very popular saying, it's easier said than done, but truly, keep it simple. Try not to, what I think we're trying to do is to add all of what we would do in our classroom online. But the reality is, this is where we call online pedagogy. That's completely different. So we have to make sure that we're applying all the different techniques for online learning. That's what we need to do. So keep it simple. Winging it will not cut it. Online shows so much of how prepared we are or how unprepared we are. Online shows you how engaging you are with your students, and also it reveals how they are engaged or not with you. So when it comes to planning and preparation, make sure you take all of these things into consideration. Consider your content, consider the teaching styles, consider how you're going to communicate with your parents, consider the safety measures that you're going to take, and consider the activities that you're going to bring, and more so consider the quality teaching that you would like to deliver so that students are learning. Tip 2, communication. Communicate, 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 communicate. You have to make sure that communication is clear. Ambiguous doesn't cut it, because from experience, this can be misconstrued and it can create a domino effect, a snowball effect. So you want to make sure that you have a system of communication. That way, the parents will know when to reach you, students will know when you are going to reach out to them, and when they can reach out to you, also with administration and your colleagues. So you have to set a system. Another thing in communication, you have to set boundaries. If not, you'll find yourself constantly interacting and you lose quality time in preparation. So I would say make sure that when you're communicating, all the stakeholders know that this is the time in which my teacher is available, this is the time when my child's teacher is available, this is the time when my colleague is available. All of that. The key thing is to have a system and set boundaries. That way you are not feeling overwhelmed by the constant messages coming in or having to report or give feedback throughout the day. The reality is, if you were inside your classroom or doing on-site teaching, there's no way you'll be doing all of that communication because you'll be focused on your students. So make sure that you have a system and that the parents, the students, your colleagues, they are all privy to this system. All right, so remember, communicate, and in doing so, please be clear. Outline what is required and make sure that there's no ambiguity in your communication. Don't forget. Tip 3, establish clear guidelines. And it definitely connects with communication. Online etiquette. Think of the procedures through, your morning meetings with your students. Think of what your expectations of them, and also outline what they'll be doing in the online activities, and also for the on-site, or I would say the delayed activities. Make sure that they know how you will proceed throughout the day and throughout the week. That way they will say, okay, I know on a Monday morning we will do our morning affirmation, and then we're going to choose our monitor for the day, and then we're going to have a good time talking with our friends for about 10 minutes. They are aware of the guidelines so that they don't do some of these activities during sessions. Another thing I forgot to mention, with your guidelines, this is where you can set your ground rules. And I would say make sure this is done at the beginning of the week so that students are not confused. And the reason I say that, most times students are not aware what's required of them, and so they leave the classroom feeling confused or feeling frustrated. So instead of you giving them the do's and don'ts, how about allowing them to share what are some things that they should and should not do, and how they can interact with their classmates. Because remember this, I know that we want to make sure that we are putting a lot into our live classrooms or live lessons. However, make sure that they have time where they can just have a free talk with their classmates. So let them go through establishing some of the guidelines, and that way they can take a bit of ownership of their learning and enjoy the journey, right? So remember, set those clear guidelines for your class. Okay, so this is where it gets a little bit heavy, but I'm going to try and skim. Tip 4: break up your content in bite-sized lessons. I know this is not easy, however, online pedagogy is completely different from in the classroom. And the reason I say that is you can't pump everything on your online classroom, especially if it's live. And you're going to be hearing these two terms everywhere you turn. You have the synchronous and the asynchronous. And simply put, with your synchronous, that's where you do all your live, real-time lessons. That's where your students can contact you right away. You can conduct your discussions, your different activities with students at the same time. Okay, so just consider things that you're doing in real time. With your asynchronous, that's the self-paced activities. That's where the students are offline. That's where you send materials to them, whether by email or deliver to their mail. That's where they sit in their own space, whether in their classroom or at home. With this particular tip, decide what should be live and what should be offline. And I would say keep your online lessons engaging. I would not want to see students sitting in a live session just working like this. They could do that offline. With your online sessions, you want to see students interacting with their classmates. You want to see them up and moving about, answering questions, doing communicative activities, or solving mysteries or problems with their classmates. You throwing them questions, they throwing back questions to you, having them all engaged. That's where your live lesson should have. Use the essential content which should go live. That's where your students will need you to be present, to be there, to guide them. And I want you to remember this. Your live lesson should be engaging. So I would say avoid lecturing, avoid giving a lot of instructions in your live lessons. You want your students to be participating. You want your students to be having discussions with their classmates. So if you can structure your lessons in such a way where you give the instructions through the asynchronous and the self-paced activities, do that. And then where you have students participating, having discussions, doing activities with their friends, then use that for the synchronous lesson. So be careful that your live lessons are not saturated with giving instructions or lecturing. Okay, so that is where you're going to categorize your content. I would say bear in mind your age group. Okay, think of how long they can sit in that live class and what would get them to be engaged. Another thing to note with your lessons, make sure that it's bite-sized. We cannot pack everything online. And not only that, you have to consider your age group. You have to consider how long they can sit and listen or do the activities that you have prepared for them. So I would say stick to the essentials that you want to be there when they're doing the activities. That's the key thing to making sure that they are learning and they're fully engaged. So that's it. Tip 5, very important, your workspace. Set up a practical workspace. You don't want to have any clutter. Let's check. Nice, eh? You want to make sure that your workspace is decluttered. You don't want to have to be rummaging through where to find your teaching materials, where to find your pen, where to find the student list, all these different things. Not only that, you want to make sure it is presentable, because your students will see all of that when you go online, and it can be distracting and distasteful. We just remember, an organized workspace contributes significantly to your productivity. Another thing too is to try to remember your background. I know that we like to display all different things in our classrooms, and I'm mainly targeting, right now I'm looking at, the elementary and the kindergarten level, but also in high school. We don't want it too bland to the point where it's just unattractive, unappealing. So it's all about balance. However, the three key things I would say with your online classroom: one, your audio. That's one, because even if your students can see but they can't hear you, trust me, they'll be out. So make sure, one, your audio is clear. Two, your video, you're not out of your video, doesn't look good. You want to make sure that your students can see you, okay? And you want to present yourself in a way that they can actually stay focused and they're engaged, right? Presentation is key. Presentation is key, and along with your workspace, think of how you present yourself. Now, I'm not saying that you need to always be, but the reality is, with online, just think of doubling up on what you would do in your class. So your presence, because it's virtual, you have to be able to translate that energy you have behind the screen to your students, right? You want to make sure that they feel that excitement without you being in their space. So you have to really amplify your personality. It's true. You have to amplify your personality. Not like this though. We're all different. Don't feel pressured that you need to be like, another teacher. But at the same time, remember, presentation is key. So if you look, disengaged or feeling like you have to be here when you don't want to, your students can pick that up just like that. Okay, so I think I think I gave you audio, video, and the next thing is lighting. Make sure that your students are not straining their eyes to see if you're using a board or if you're demonstrating something to them. Make sure that they can see, okay? The key thing is that you want your students to feel engaged or a part of the online class community, and your workspace, it contributes to that as well. So remember. Tip 6, use different teaching styles. This is where you come to life for your students. And in fact, this is something I enjoy. We have to remember though, we want to keep our students engaged and active. So we have to think of creative ways to get our students moving about, to get our students interacting with their classmates. So think of different ways how you can convey your lessons. You have role play, scavenger hunt, votes, you have mystery that you can have your students try to solve, and you have breakout sessions. And the list goes on. You just have to find creative ways, and guess what? You have to bring your personality into it. Another thing I forgot, remember, you have students who are always firing away. They're outgoing, they're ready, they're always engaged. But you do have students who are reserved. You do have students that you have to, be with them through and through. So you have to make sure that your teaching style is reaching all your students. Final tip, tip 7. This is very important. This is where we talk about establishing safety and security protocols, and it is very important for students to know what they should do. Without that, students will not feel safe, or parents will feel a little bit uneasy with their children going online. And in order to reduce that, or I would say in order to give them a sense of security and safety, go through the steps that you would like to take if there's a breach in privacy or if there's a technical difficulty. Maybe you have to end class early. You can tell them, okay, if we have to end class abruptly, these are the steps that you should take after. Whether a message through WhatsApp is going to come through or an email will be sent. So those little things will help them to feel a sense of security. You can also have them involved. You have the older students, they too can give some tips. For the younger ones, maybe they don't know what they should do. Maybe they see the screen just shut off. right? Or something is going to happen, or there's a challenge, you use signs. Remember, we've been doing this. Stranger danger, right? Use little things like this that will help them to know what this lollipop means. Little things to get them to remember what to do if there's some security breach, right? The key thing is to make sure that your students feel safe and secure, because this online community, it's unpredictable. Always have a backup plan. Focus on the things that you can control and maximize on those. And at the end of the day, what we can do is just thrive on the good things. Remember, simplicity, originality, flexibility, and our teaching styles, I truly believe, is what will help us rather to get through this moment. So we're not just going to try and jump over the obstacles, we're going to get through it, and while we're doing so, we are going to garner skills and great experiences. At the end of the day, these are just very basic things that we can learn as we push through what we'll call right now a very challenging time in education. So there you have it, 7 tips, and I know that we have so many more. There are many different strategies and different ideas to help our teachers, transition from on-site to online classrooms. However, I do believe that some of these tips that I've shared have helped, and I would like for you to let me know what are some of the tips and tricks that you have been using. What are some strategies that I haven't mentioned that you think should be of great benefit to teachers who will be going online? Alright, so drop them below. Let me know what you think. Remember, change is constant. So whether or not you don't want it, it is still coming. The key thing is just to be prepared and to have an open mind. Till then, it's your girl Shauna. Remember, like, share, and subscribe to my channel as we look further into these tips and strategies that we can use and to help our teachers who are moving from on-site to online. Walk good.